Welcome inside the John Book Fieldhouse and to this week's edition of Falcon Focus. The masks are on, we are socially distanced, and we are ready to go. In segment number 2, we talk with football and men's lacrosse athlete Alex Loading. But here on segment number 1, we talk esports with their head coach, Lewis Smith. My name is Matt Mental. Thanks for joining us on CWFalcons.com. And, it seems like Coach Smith every week I have a guest on. I have to talk about the impact of COVID-19 and how maybe their sport's been impacted or practices or whatever have been canceled. But esports is one area where I feel like COVID-19 really hasn't had as big of an impact. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. And first, thanks for having me. Great opening. This is very, very, very professional. Try to make sure I can hold my own on this end. But thanks for having me. I feel like I'm still relatively new here. Started in January. Obviously, it was a weird spring semester, so I still feel like a new. But like being here, this is how I know I made it. This is a good feeling. But yeah, it's been a wild year as a whole. COVID's impacting a lot of things, and esports. I want to say like it is thriving. I don't want to say it's like benefiting off of what is happening, but we just have that comfort of we can't be canceled. We have the luxury, even we had it in spring, we can go 100% online if we need to. So all of our players are still able to really focus and really still have a competitive outlet when a lot of our players who also play traditional sports here have a very uncertain future. They can kind of take comfort in dedicating their time to this, still being able to compete and work towards a goal with the team and not worry about it getting canceled in the blink of an eye.
And I do want to admit, before we get too far along, I am a novice when it comes to esports, so some of these questions may be basic, but hopefully we can educate and inform as we go along. And I guess, outside of the fact it's video games, I guess, the start, let's just explain what esports is and how an esport competition works.
Yeah, so it is video games, but something that's important for people to know is not all video games are esports. I know, like, before we were on here, you were talking, like, you love playing Mario, go save the princess, but that's a game that was just, it's fun, you got a story mode, you're just playing on your own. These are games where you are competing against other people. Something like Rocket League, it's pretty much soccer with playing cars, but it's something that you cannot do unless it's 3 versus 3, going against each other, keeping score, so it's not games that are just like casual with a bunch of random acts in it. It's like very competitive games, not against the clock. It's going against other human beings at all times.
And you guys have your own area here on campus, do you not?
Yeah, we got a Esports Arena over in Stunkel. It was one of the first things we really built for our program when we got on campus, and like the amount of support we've gotten from the school has been amazing. They just said, "Hey, we trust you that we need this. Go deck out that space." And it's an amazing space for practice, competitions. It's kind of been a safe haven for the students throughout all the uncertainty that's going on. And we've got really nice computer equipment there, which when you're competing and practicing, you need to be on the best. A little lag or, equipment that, breaks while you're playing can really be a detriment in terms of competing.
Just going to ask you about that. So we're talking, gaming computers versus some kind of a console.
Yeah, yeah.
Video game system.
Most esports are played on computer, so we got some really nice computers, and like the full peripherals, HyperX headset. But I don't want to go into like all the like the nitty gritty gamer stuff. But yeah, we got really nice setup. We do have some console esports like Call of Duty. One people love playing on PlayStation, Xbox. So there's a good balance, but it all revolves around computers.
So how do you put a roster together? Can anybody join? How does that work?
Yeah, so the first thing I did is I knew I was coming in and the program did not exist at all. So I went to build a roster out of the current students, had a lot of talented players just kind of crawl out of the woodwork here. It's kind of one of those things where it's like a hobby that people don't talk about, and then as soon as they have like, oh, I can like compete at a high level and like do this as a varsity sport, like I'm going all in. So a lot of people have been really stepping up. So I had over 100 people join within my first couple months.
Jeez.
Which was crazy. And a lot of some of them took it extremely seriously. Some thought it was still a little more casual. But now, it's fall. We've been here for about 10 months, and we have over 70 people that are practicing and competing on a weekly basis.
I was going to ask you about, when you look at a roster, what's kind of neat is next to some of their names, you have their gaming names or screen names, if you will, but it lists their primary game.
Yeah.
How does that come about? Do they get to pick what their primary focus may be or what their game is, or is that just you go out and assign each of these gamers a certain game to focus on?
So yeah, there's a lot of stigmas with esports, and that's a big one. Like these games that they're playing, it's not like, football. It's like, hey, you're tall, athletic.
Yeah.
I think you'd be a great tight end, or I want to take you from linebacker to cornerback. It's not, I think, what's best for them. It's everyone who's on my team, has a primary game, they've been playing their game for years. Like everyone that's on a Rocket League team, they approach me and say, hey, I play Rocket League. I'm really good at Rocket League. I want to take it to the next level. So then I give them all the resources in order to take it to the next level, in order to be super competitive. So it's not just, hey, pick this game up, because they take years and years to really perfect and be able to compete with colleges across the entire nation.
I think I counted 11 different games were listed up and down that list of whose primary game is what.
Yep.
How familiar are you with those 11 games? Do you have to be, from a coaching standpoint, familiar with all of those games?
So I've been working in esports for about 6 years. So I've been around the bush, and I joke around, 6 years in esports is like 30 years. It's such a young and booming industry. Everything's moving so fast. So I have definitely too much of a knowledge across the board, but I'm glad I have a job where that's actually valuable. But I try to be very honest with my players. This isn't like I'm a football coach. I know everything about football. I'm going to tell you how to be the best football player. This is, you are better at the game. At any game across the board, you guys are better than the game than I am, than I'll ever be. So a lot of my coaching revolves around mental aspect, fundamentals. I'm a big stats guy. I like boiling everything down to stats and taking teaching lessons out of that. So it's not like, hey, look what I can do, now you go do it. It's, this is what you did. This is what I see from a very outside perspective. And then we're going to lean on our teammates for the very, very in-game knowledge, the things that I would have to be playing Fortnite for years to understand.
Well, that's an interesting point you bring up. I was going to ask you about, from a coaching standpoint. Obviously, in other sports, you get timeouts and it's more hands-on, X's and O's. So what are you doing during a competition? I mean, do you get the opportunity to communicate with your gamers? Is it something you kind of, you're watching, observing, and you can review later on down the road in practices?
Yeah, so the main thing I'm doing during a game is I'm standing over their shoulders, and I have this really bad habit of just plucking hairs out of my beard when I'm stressed. Some people talk about I'm stressed, the hairline's going. I think that's a different problem I'll deal with down the road, but I just pluck hairs out of my beard. But yeah, once the game starts, they're completely on their own. There's no timeouts. I'm not in the headset with them. So a lot of what I talked about with my coaching philosophy of kind of empowering them to be in charge of what's happening in game really works well, because you want to practice how you play. So Fortnite was going last night. Once they're in the game, I'm gone. They're completely on their own. That Fortnite actually works pretty well, because there's times in between rounds. They'll play about 6 or 7 rounds a night, so I can talk in to jump up, hey, what happened? But for the most part, they don't need me. My Fortnite players, Augie, Gingy, and Code World, they've been playing together just hours and hours since summer. So they're to the point where there's nothing I need to tell them. So they are super, super comfortable, and I really just try to empower all the students to be their own coaches, be their own supporting cast for their players as soon as comms goes on.
So outside of competition, it's a pretty, compact schedule. It seems like every week there's 3 or 4 competitions going on, but what's
Never a dull week.
No, it seems that way. And what does a practice look like, though, as far as practice goes, or what's expected of these gamers? What's a practice in esports?
Yeah, so it varies a lot on the game, but the big thing in terms of practices is we kind of separate it. Do we want to have a very intrinsic look at practice and really focus on what we need to do better, talk things through? VOD review is a big one, just going back and watching film of games, but then we also have the ability to really easily manufacture what a competitive aspect looks like. Football doesn't have or basketball doesn't have the luxury of just saying hey, hitting up another school, you guys want to quick do a full game 5v5. That doesn't work. But we have the ability where we can have scrimmages against other teams just with 10 minutes notice and use that as practice too. So it's kind of varying between, do we want to just focus on us, perfect our game, do more of a scouting on ourselves and our future opponent, or do we want to manufacture that competitive aspect and get some scrimmages against other teams in the nation?
Well, you mentioned watching video, and I think what's unique is if you go to cwfalcons.com and look at the esports schedule, there are links every time esports is competing. You can watch the event take place. If fans were to do that, what can they expect to see? If they're watching a live event, what are they watching?
Yeah, so they are seeing what our players are seeing. Like, it's straight up. The players are competing on computers, and the what we are broadcasting is a view of what is on their computer screen. So you're seeing exactly what the players are seeing, and for the most part, you're hearing exactly what the players are saying and thinking. Twitch is where we're broadcasting everything. I know a lot of people are coming around to Twitch. It's not quite just turning on channel 12 or something, but when you're watching, you are you're listening to the communication of our team, seeing what they're seeing. It's very like a very in-game experience.
You look last night. You guys were able to compete. You will compete again a few more times here
Yep.
this week, and so on through about mid to late November. As far as this season goes, how has the season been developing? Are you pleased with what you're seeing in the various, I guess, groups or games? What are your expectations going forward?
Yeah. So started in January. So we had the spring semester. That was like a really good training run for us because the big thing we had to do was kind of switch our students' mindsets from like, I play this game casually, it's fun, to like, okay, now let's be the best. Let's compete against the best teams in the nation. Like, it's a very big mindset shift that made for a lot of growing pains back in spring. But fall, like, they're into it. They got, the butterflies out of the way. Like, they are ready to compete. So this semester has been amazing. I've seen a lot of players that I had last semester step up in major ways. I've had some freshmen come in and do really big things. Fortnite just clinched playoffs, which means they're top 32 in the Western United States. Wisconsin's considered Western in that. Fortnite, I mentioned them earlier. They're doing extremely well. They are the 24th best team in the nation. And like something people don't realize with esports is like the playing field is very, very level. Like we're going against the biggest schools in the nation. Like within the last 3 weeks, we've beaten Texas Tech, Syracuse, and Michigan. So we're going against the best in the nation, and our students aren't intimidated by it anymore like we were in months past.
I laugh because like you almost saw my notes because I was going to bring that up is the fact that you're not just facing Division III schools, but I mean
Mm-hmm.
it's across the board and just the popularity of esports. And it seems like you're almost behind the times if you're not jumping on board and you have an esports offering.
Yeah, it's especially with everything coming to light right now with how important things are from being remote. Zoom's popping off, so everyone loves being able to compete and communicate from the comfort of their own home. So that's a environment esports really thrives in, and Concordia really got kind of ahead of the game with just picking it up early this year and putting all their investment into it as a varsity sport. And you're seeing a lot of other universities follow suit.
For this last portion, I want to talk a little bit about you more as we get
Oh,
to know
all right,
you and,
all
and,
right.
and, and your background here in esports. And okay, I read that professionally, you got the opportunity to work with a number of professional sports teams.
You like did some scouting
Well,
on
I,
me,
I read your
huh?
bio. I mean, CWFalcons.com. You
God,
can't get anything past that site.
you
But
are a true professional.
but I do want to know about what teams you work with and just tell us about some of those experiences.
Okay, yeah. So everything I do in esports is rooted in a traditional sports background. I was a big football player growing up, and then even when I got to college, I was kind of unsure of what I wanted to do for a career, but I knew what I wanted to work with, and that was sports. So I went to University of Minnesota, walked on to the team, didn't end up making the team as a walk-off, which ended up being an amazing blessing because it was able to force me to really focus more on academics. So I graduated with a sport management degree in Minnesota from Wisconsin. Not still a Packers fan, not Vikings. I worked for the Vikings. That's what I'm about to say, but still Packers. Twin Cities opened up so many opportunities while I was there. I worked for a lacrosse team, the MLB, the Timberwolves to get into the NBA, the Vikings to get into the NFL, and the NCAA just working with Gopher Sports over there. So it wasn't until I graduated college that I even knew what esports were, and that was 2015, which just it makes me feel old now. That was
That's
5
5
years
years
ago.
already.
Yeah. It wasn't until 2015 that I really started buying into esports, and the reason I was able to buy into it because I played video games a lot growing up. So the idea of being able to play them as like at very high competitive level was great, and it was something that I could like grasp pretty easily. So then everything I was working for traditional sports, I just brought over to esports. Try to come over with that same very, I guess, like defined and professional view of the industry and take it to an industry that was an absolute mess and still is relatively messy. So the transition to esports was great. It was surprisingly smooth. That's what I tell a lot of people who are big fans of traditional sports is that there's not that much of a disconnect as people think. So I've had some good success in esports. Started my own company, have worked with a lot of stats, worked with a couple other esports pro orgs, and now I'm super happy to take a much more game and I guess developmental focused job with the coach and really like break ground into collegiate esports.
Yeah, it blew my mind looking at that bio, and you can again see it at cwfalcons.com. As you mentioned, within 5 years, all the opportunities that have come forward or you've created through esports. But from a coaching standpoint, what made this opportunity at Concordia something that you wanted to pursue?
A lot of things were just obviously, like I said, everything's kind of rooted in sports, and just the collegiate sports industry is incredible. You find, the big house in Michigan that sells out quicker than any NFL stadium. So just like the amount of passion behind that is something that I have always admired and something that I would love for esports to be able to replicate. So to be able to I don't want to call myself a pioneer. It sounds like, like cocky, and I don't, my head's not that big, but just to help, I guess, start that revolution. I think that's even worse than call myself starting a revolution, but just being part of that process of starting collegiate sports. I knew enough about the game to speak confidently as a coach. I've never coached before, unless you include 7-year-old kids at the YMCA, and when I was in high school. That's the extent of my coaching experience. But it's been a very, very fun ride, a huge learning experience for me. I'm learning as much as all these students are while I'm doing this.
So to wrap it all up and maybe sum it all up, when you look at esports, is there one thing or one area you point at and say, that's my favorite thing about what esports is all about?
Yeah, it's kind of what we touched about with like us playing the biggest schools in the nation. Like the competition field is completely even. It doesn't matter if you're 6'6" and super athletic, if you're a 5'4" female, if you're a guy. No joke, I have a person on my team that doesn't even have all 10 fingers.
No
So
kidding.
like there is no barrier for entry. Anyone can play. Sex, gender, race does not matter. It's completely open for everyone. And you come in, you dedicate yourself, and you can be at Concordia University, Wisconsin, Mequon, and you can be a top 25 team in the entire nation above any other school, any other Power 5 conference school in the nation. So the fact that you can truly be whatever you want, as good as you want, is my favorite part of esports.
Well, good stuff, Coach Smith. It was great meeting you, introducing you to the fans here on Falcon Focus, and continued success with esports.
Thanks for having me on. This, like I said, this was an honor. I feel like I officially made it. This is like you talked up my resume, which I appreciate, but this video is going right to the top of it.
I was going to say, to push it even further, look for the weekly esports reports on cwfalcons.com. You see?
You're right
good,
on
good
with
stuff.
the plugs.
I'm trying here. When we come back, we have Alex Loden as we talk football and men's lacrosse. When we come back here on Falcon Focus on cwfalcons.com.
God never intended for us to live a comfortable life. He created us to go outside our comfort zones, to use our gifts and talents in the service of others, to live a you-first life in a me-first world. At Concordia University, it's our mission to prepare you for that path, so that you stand apart from the crowd and live a life that's actually uncommon. Concordia University. Live uncommon.
Welcome back to Falcon Focus as we get our hand sanitizer, and got to make sure the air is clean and everything else is disinfected as we keep things rolling right along in segment number 2, and we turn our attention to football and men's lacrosse with senior Alex Loden. Can I offer you any hand sanitizer?
Gladly take some. You never know.
See, I was going to say,
today.
if you said no, then I would have just said it was more for me, but we're all good.
No, you always got to stay safe.
Absolutely, and trying to keep it socially distanced, and the masks are up.
Exactly.
We were talking esports a second ago before I start talking to you about football and men's lacrosse. Are you a gamer at all? Do you have a go-to video game or anything to that degree?
I am not, but when I played video games in high school, when I had free time and all that, I was big into Call of Duty, like Black Ops 2, Modern Warfare, and then I also, of course, love Madden and 2K. You got to get the sports games in there. Kind of dabbled in Fortnite, but it never really stuck out to me.
Didn't catch
or
on?
anything. No, I didn't really catch on, but I know it got really big. I think my freshman year. At freshman year, if you walked in anyone's room, there's at least one person playing Fortnite in there. So, I mean, I hopped on a few games, but it never stuck with me.
You'll be happy to know if things fall through or your eligibility just runs out, that if you want to go, esports, Call of Duty is on that list of primary games for some of the gamers. But You mentioned when I had free time, and oh man, those are the days, right, for you? I mean,
Yeah.
you're a two-sport athlete. Here at Concordia, obviously we mentioned men's lacrosse and football. Was that always the goal to come here and play both of those sports?
Um, Actually, the goal was to get recruited in either sport because in high school I loved both equally. I was actually getting recruited by Coach Eder here, so I was getting recruited for football first. And throughout the recruiting process, I kind of talked to Coach Eder and Coach Fahey as well. Kind of talked to him equally. I had asked him, "Oh, hey, I see you have a men's lacrosse team. They've historically been great." I was looking at records and rosters and all that. So then he put me in contact with Coach Fahey. Me and Coach Fahey got to talking. He actually came out to one of my games in the spring. So I had already committed for football, and lacrosse was just like the cherry on top.
Yeah.
And I'm glad both worked out.
And usually you have football games in the fall, maybe some fall training camp in men's lacrosse, but the men's lacrosse season takes place in the spring. How the heck is it going to work out this year for you? You're going to be the Deion Sanders of Concordia, where I mean you're going to have football and men's lacrosse crisscrossing games that count in the springtime.
So, as of right now, I don't know. You're right. I'm in a tricky situation as lacrosse is always played in the spring. As of right now, hopefully it works out as this. So lacrosse we begin in February. So we get our 2 weeks of practice. We start our conference games. And hopefully by the time our conference tournament is done, and hopefully we win, I'll literally just jump over to football. So I'll finish my lacrosse season, and then that Monday I'll have football practice. So, I mean, that's the best case scenario. If they do overlap, I have no plan as of right now. The second semester I can already foresee being tough as now I got both sports in one semester. I'm looking to graduate as well. So I just got a lot on my plate second semester.
So is that a conversation you have with the coaches? Is that something you haven't crossed yet? I mean, they certainly know that hey, I have a multi-sport athlete on my roster, so they're probably aware that that's going to be an issue at some point. How do you even approach that topic?
I'm unsure. I haven't had any conversations with coaches. I talked to Coach Eder in August when a decision was made that football would be in the spring because I was preparing all summer as we were going to have football this fall. But, because of COVID, everything changes, and just like that, everything is different. I talked to him in the beginning. He said they're going to do everything in their power to let two-sport athletes play both in some capacity because I'm not the only two-sport athlete on the team or even on the lacrosse team or other teams for that matter. But, no, I haven't actually got the chance to sit down with them and discuss my options and what I'm going to do yet. But it'll be a difficult conversation, but hopefully it works out. I'm looking forward to playing both. It is my senior year. It would be really sad to, have to choose and then not get to play one of the sports I came here to play and one of the sports I love. So,
Well, let's break it down. Let's start by talking football first, and then we'll move into men's lacrosse. Training camp here in the fall. I assume it's over. Maybe it's still going on. Is it done at this point?
for football, we actually end this week. So we got practice tomorrow and then Saturday and Sunday, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Has training camp looked different from any football training camps you've been involved with in the past with everything that's been going on with COVID-19?
Oh, yeah. So, in a typical season, we'd come in 10 to 12 days early, 2 weeks to give us our training camp before our first game, maybe even get a scrimmage in there. And it's football 24/7. You get to school at 7:30. You were not leaving until 10 o'clock at night. It's just football, going and going and going. So, like, those 12 days are tough, and that's normal training camp. This year, we've only had 3 practices a week, but we've put an emphasis on the weight room. So we're practicing 3 days a week, but we're also getting in the weight room 4 times a week. So we still have football responsibilities throughout the entire week, but it has been very different. And then speaking practice, we've just been in helmets. We haven't put on pads. During drills, you have to socially distance. So in line, you got to be 6 feet apart. When we do go into team segments, like 7-on-7 or 8 for 80, which is kind of we just get up and down the field, move the ball. You got to put your mask on because you break that 6-foot barrier. It's really odd playing football with a mask on your helmet because you're already running around, hard to breathe,
No
and
kidding.
you just got a mask stuck to your face. So, yeah, it's been really different. I think a lot of guys have adjusted on the fly, and I think it's been pretty successful. We've made do with what we got, and I think we're getting a lot out of it. So.
Well, how tough is it for you? You're a linebacker. You want to hit some guys and not get that opportunity. I mean, you got to have that itch.
Oh, yeah, and I think that's something great that this training camp gives us because even though we're not working towards a game or working to like a championship just yet. We are working to a championship, but it kind of adds that fuel to the fire. It's like, all right, we just went through 2 months of practice and we haven't had pads on. We haven't come into contact with anyone. As soon as we get those pads on, that excitement level is going to go through the roof. And then when we get to play another team, it's going to be lights out. I think guys are really excited, and it's just building and building and building, and then eventually that day will come that we have pads on, we get to play a game, and yeah, it'll just be special.
Yeah, knock on wood, everything goes according to plan. That first football game will be at Lakeland on the 20th of March. It still seems weird to say March 20th, football season opener against Lakeland, but I want to test your memory a little bit and go back to your sophomore year, 2018. You played in 9 games. You played, in fact, 9 games each of the last 2 seasons for football. But how much fun was that 2018 campaign where, you talk about trying to build for a conference championship. That was a season where the team was predicted to finish in 6th, and yet down the stretch, you guys were playing for a conference championship. So every game has some type of importance. It eventually fell against Eureka here. But just, being a part of a team that exceeded expectations and played meaningful football throughout the season.
Yeah, so 2018, well, we could even go even further to 2017, my freshman year. To be honest, we weren't that good. We were 2-7, 3-6. I mean, we had just beat Finlandia and Rockford, kind of gimme games. And then we walk into that sophomore year, and we had a different mentality. We had a good group of seniors returning, and then we had so many young guys playing. I wasn't just the only sophomore. It was like a team dominated by sophomores and juniors out there. And, winning is fun. And it was just so exciting. And then we get to play Eureka on our home turf. That game came down to the wire. It was a shootout. It was like 48-46 or something like that. Wow, that was a heartbreaking way to end it because we stopped him on 4th and goal. And that running back, who was something special, he was something else. He broke through like 3 tackles, went sideline to the other sideline, dove across the pylon, and they scored a touchdown with like 40 seconds left, and that sealed it. So that took us a little bit out of the race as Eureka went on to go undefeated and win that conference undefeated in their first year in the conference. So, I mean, their team was just stacked. But, I mean, it was something special. We were 7-2, 6-3, something like that. It was such a turnaround from my freshman year, and then we had big expectations for last year. Some things didn't go as planned. We had a lot of mistakes, some turnovers that kind of cost us. But yeah, no, that sophomore year is something so special, and we all had our eyes on the prize, and we were lucky to play basically a championship game on our field. So
that 2019 team going 5-5. But we were talking about 2018, and one thing that stood out, too, is every year the Falcons play for a couple of traveling trophies. You have the Cheese Bowl against the Lakeland Muskies. You have the Lutheran Cup on the line, the Luther Cup and the Lutheran Bowl against Wisconsin Lutheran. You won both back in 2018. You shut out the Muskies 17-0. You beat Wisconsin Lutheran, another nail-biter. It seemed like every game that year was a nail-biter. It was 21-14. And even last year, that 5-5 season, able to maintain the Luther Cup in your possession with a 28-21. It was a physical, and at times even got a little extracurricular against the Warriors. But when you look at those matchups against Lakeland, against Wisconsin Lutheran, how intense are those games? I mean, it just seems like regardless of what the records may be, whether it be because of the trophy, it's a rival, it just seems like there's a little extra something when you see them on the schedule.
Oh, yeah, no. So those 2 games are super important, super big. They're huge rivalries, and we're actually playing for hardware. We're playing for something to put in these trophy cases right outside in the lobby. Coach Eder walks into our Sunday meetings. We don't even get to the next week yet. Sunday meetings, and he's like, I don't care about this last game. It's Cheese Bowl week, or we got the Luther Cup coming up, and it's just a whole different mentality, mindset for that entire week. You'll be sitting in class on a Wednesday, just shaking your leg, ready to go. And, of course, Lakeland, huge rival, always physical. That 2018 team, when we shut them out 17-0, we dominated on all facets of the ball. We were just clicking on all cylinders that year. And then the Luther Cup, we've won the last 2 years. Always exciting.
And that's gotten better over the years because Wisconsin Lutheran's program has gotten better, and so all of a sudden it's a lot more competitive than it used to be.
Yes. Sophomore year, I think we had to have a game-winning drive to beat them sophomore year. And then that was also our last game of the year. So we lose the heartbreaker to Eureka, but then we make it up by winning the Luther Cup, securing that cup again. And, yeah, no, those games are just a different mentality all week. You're sitting there, huge rivalry. You're just looking forward to it all week. In practice, you go a little bit harder. You hit a little bit harder. You get up in the weight room, you go a little harder. It's just different.
So from a football standpoint, growing up, do you have a favorite football player? Was there a player that you looked up to? Was there a player you emulated in the NFL?
Yeah. So growing up, I'm a Chicago Bears fan. Growing up, I was a Brian Urlacher fan.
Okay, makes
definitely,
sense.
Definitely my role model. And now I play linebacker. Junior and senior year in high school, I wore 54. So, yeah, Urlacher is my guy.
I know Packer fans will not hold that against you. You're a Bears fan, but they're in a pretty good season so far, are they not?
They are.
Does that surprise you a little bit?
No, it doesn't surprise me. It surprises me how bad they can play and still be 5-1. So the fact that they're 5
That's true.
the fact that they're 5-1 and they haven't played their best football yet. I mean, teams in the NFL should be scared playing the Bears because the Bears haven't put together a full game. I think they scored this Sunday was the first time they scored in the third quarter all year. So they put it on in the first half, let you come back in the third, and then come the fourth, they just dominate you. So, I mean, the fact that the Bears can't play a full game and they're 5-1, I mean, the league should be on notice.
Of course, you're referencing the win against the Carolina Panthers. You're from Mundelein, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
When you look, okay, we talk about the rivals being Lakeland and Wisconsin Lutheran, but how about for you? Is there a team, I mean, because you play so many schools from Illinois during the football season, is there maybe one school that you really get up to playing against even more so because maybe just based on location?
Yeah, I feel like it's a whole school thing, kind of. Like, when you see Aurora on the schedule, that's the team I put.
Yeah,
Aurora is
true.
the rival for everyone, so looking to lacrosse, Aurora is the biggest one. Like, that game for the lacrosse team, that mentality going into that game is much higher than Cheese Bowl or Luther Cup. That's a conference championship game every time you step on the field. So that one's different. Basketball, we see men's basketball, Aurora versus us. That's a huge game. So definitely Aurora is another game that the football team looks forward to. That one's going to be physical, hopefully high scoring, or a defensive battle, whichever. You're not playing for a trophy, but you are playing for like a pride, and they're always a top team in conference. So it's always going to be a good game.
Well, it's funny you bring up Aurora because that's transitioned into men's lacrosse, and that's a team the Falcons have seen 5 consecutive years, at least 5 completed seasons in a Midwest Lacrosse Conference Tournament Championship, and the Falcons, the last team to win the tournament championship, doing so in 2019. But let's start by, again, talking about training camp and how things played out in training camp and how were you able to juggle the men's lacrosse demands with the football demands?
Yeah, so the lacrosse schedule for this fall was a little bit different. I was actually playing both sports at once, sometimes in the same day. So my weekends were kind of hectic. Lacrosse had a pretty set schedule. It was like Tuesday, Thursday, and then Saturdays. So the Tuesday and Thursday worked well with football because football would be on Wednesday. But then the Saturdays, I'd get up at 8, be at meetings by 9 for football, go to practice from 10 to 11, and then from 11 to 12, I'd run home, grab lunch, and then I'm back out on the field playing lacrosse. And then one of our Sundays was like that as well. And then it became like lacrosse was like 4 or 5 times a week. So we're going lacrosse Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and a Saturday. And then football would be Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I was just going all week. It was pretty crazy. I don't know how I got through it.
Well, luckily you enjoy playing both.
Oh, yeah, I do. And, I mean, even though I'll come home on a Saturday at like 5 o'clock and just want to lay on the couch, I mean, it was worth it. I end up going. I get to play both sports in some capacity for my senior year and juggling it all with the COVID and everything. And yeah, I'm just glad it happened and I was able to do it.
Going back to last spring, you started all 6 games that were played as the goalkeeper for the men's lacrosse team. I want to bring up one performance, though, particularly before COVID-19 canceled the duration of the season. You set the single-game record in program history with 25 saves at North Central on the 22nd of February. What do you remember about that particular performance?
Well, about the game, it was a close one. I was getting shelled. I mean, you can't make 25 saves and give up. I think I gave up like 14 goals without getting shelled. So I was working my butt off. But I could just feel that it was something special. Like, I was just on that day. I made like 6 saves in the first quarter, and I was like, wow, like, I'm feeling good today. It was a beautiful day again. And then school's in Illinois, so my parents were there. My brother was there. So, you know, that was just a great game for me. I don't know. That's all I could say about it. I was just on. I was seeing the ball well. Made some couple doorstep saves, a couple wide open shots that should have gone in. I just robbed the North Central shooters. Yeah, that's about it. I was just on.
Certainly, you're going to be pegged to be the starting goalkeeper again in the springtime. The spring season will get underway February 13th at Hanover. Home opener on the 20th of February against the aforementioned North Central Cardinals. But, you got the opportunity to be on the team during their championship run. Garrett Wolford was the goalkeeper at the time, and certainly he has set the bar high.
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn, or what did you see from watching him? And obviously, you're in that role, and what can you take from watching him that you can now bring during a full season?
Yeah, so that year it was just me and Garrett as the goaltenders. I backed him up. He was dominant his entire career. He played in 4 straight conference championships. Thankfully, he won one his senior year. And sophomore year, I definitely elevated my game. So when it's a team sport, your players got to help out the other players. So if I'm playing better and better, Garrett's got to play better and better.
Sure.
Not that I'd probably overtake his starting spot, but like if I'm playing better and better, he's got to play better and better. So I think I really helped him. But watching him, seeing all, like, you go on the records books, it's Garrett Wolford, Garrett Wolford, Garrett Wolford. That just gave me a fire and an inspiration, because I sat behind him for 2 years, and then I get my chance to start, and I want to break all his records. And it was just motivational to me. And he was a good role model for me when I came in. He stud goaltender. I came in my freshman year. I was like, wow, like, he's one of the best I've seen. So getting to practice with him every day, getting inside his mind, everything, that was just really helpful. And I think it really helped, like, propel me in my career.
Well, finally, this week is it for football training camp, and then maybe you get a little bit of a breather before you start looking at the actual season for football and lacrosse in the springtime. I guess let's wrap it up by asking you, what goals do you have for yourself in both of those sports when the spring does come around?
Definitely. Well, for lacrosse, I was already named captain, so that's one goal checked off for me. I hope to be named captain as well in football. And again, so we got robbed of our season last year because of COVID, and we were looking to repeat as conference champions. So that's always the goal in the lacrosse locker room. Like, we've played in so many conference championship games. We're always at the top of the conference. The goal is always to get back there and win. And that's a goal for me because, as I said, I backed up Garrett. Being on part of that team was something special, but I kind of want to win it myself, if that makes sense, without being selfish or anything.
Absolutely makes sense.
So, yeah, that's just a goal for me. And then for football, I feel like the schedule really benefits us in that we could be in a great position to win a conference championship. So being a captain on a second team and then winning back-to-back conference championships in the same semester would be incredible. So there's my goals for me. And then, of course, personally, just graduate on time and then hopefully have a job or anything coming out of college.
Absolutely. Well, Alex, all the best to you this spring. I know a lot on your plate, but I know you'll get it done, and we're cheering for you, and we'll see you out there on the field of competition.
Thanks for having me on.
That's Alex Loading. We also thank Lewis Smith, the esports head coach, for joining us here this week. For Sam Dunn behind the scenes and Jeremy Crawford, Matt Metal, thanks for joining us for Falcon Focus, and we'll do it again next week as long as it's safe to do so here on CWFalcons.com.